Hello ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the podcast. Before starting, for those of you who come to this podcast, this is where I share about two main content areas, personal financial capabilities and secondly, the life experiences I have accumulated. Okay, and now we start today's topic. In today's podcast episode, we return to learn about Bitcoin and find the answer to whether we should invest in this type of asset or not. In the previous part, the part about Bitcoin is about blockchain technology. As for other virtual currencies, today's episode has a lot of content I want to share with you, so I won't repeat the ideas in the previous episode, but the knowledge in that episode is quite good. If it's important to understand today's episode, you should watch that episode again and then watch today's episode again. I will put the video below the description for those who haven't watched it yet. In today's episode, I will go deeper into analyzing the advantages and disadvantages of Bitcoin. And I will speak in the most conscientious way possible to provide you with the fairest analysis of this type of asset. However, this is a personal perspective anyway. So my goal is not to convince you to have the same perspective as me, but simply to help you have more perspectives from which you can draw your own perspectives and ideas. Separate decision. So today's structure I will divide it into 3 parts. Corresponds to 3 specific goals set out through 3 periods of Bitcoin. First, Bitcoin was born with the desire to become a payment tool instead of fiat money. Then this goal was not feasible, so Bitcoin became a tool to shelter assets, store value, similar to gold. And finally, investment tools. Now let's analyze the first goal, which is that Bitcoin was born with the vision of replacing the fiat currency system. For those of you who don't know, fiat money is money issued by the government. It can be the dollar we are using for daily transactions, meaning that initially, Bitcoin was born with the ambition of being a payment tool. Instead of money, let's now take a general look at the popular payment tools today. In the past, when we went to buy a loaf of bread, for example, we used $1 to buy, for example. Now financial technology has developed a lot. Now we have payment methods such as bank transfer or bank transfer. Paying by card or QR code means paying via e-wallets. Bank transfer or payment via e-wallet is basically giving money to a third party. In this case, banks are wallet companies so that Bitcoin can replace money. Determining the perspective of application to everyday life. So in this paragraph, please note that I said this paragraph is about the application perspective, meaning the ability to use it for transactions. To do that, Bitcoin must meet some of the following factors. Firstly, it is the processing speed. Right now it is like you go shopping. If you make a bank transfer or pay via wallet, the seller will receive the money almost immediately, meaning there will be a change in the balance. A little longer is card payment. If you pay attention, when we pay by card, we usually stand there and wait a bit. We wait for the card machine to report success, then the transaction will be completed. If this waiting time is fast, it will be a few seconds. If it is slow, it can be 10 seconds or 20 seconds or something. According to the data I have, the current transaction processing speed of the Visa card is somewhere around 50,000 to 60,000 transactions per second of the MasterCard, which is less, but still somewhere around a few tens of thousands, with the same speed. So we also find it a bit long and a bit inconvenient. As for the current transaction processing speed of Bitcoin under optimal conditions, it is only about 7 transactions per second, an extremely low number when compared to the tens of thousands of Visa and MasterCard and in reality. In fact, the fastest transfer time via Bitcoin takes a few minutes. Otherwise it will take a few tens of minutes or even a few hours depending on the processing status of the Bitcoin network at that time. As for the speed story, we can clearly see that Bitcoin cannot be used as a payment tool at all. Next is the aspect of transaction costs. Unlike the traditional model, usually consumer transactions are free, but if you transfer large amounts, a fee will be charged as a percentage of the transaction. With Bitcoin, its nature is that information is encoded for the computer to process, but the amount of information between 1 Bitcoin and 1,000 Bitcoins, for example, is basically not much different for those who want to learn. The current Bitcoin transaction cost will be calculated by the number of Satoshi per byte. Satoshi is the smallest currency unit of Bitcoin. Each Satoshi is equivalent to about 1/100,000. 000 Bitcoin, and because the cost of transferring Bitcoin will depend on the processing traffic and the priority of each transaction processing. For example, if you want to process faster, you can pay a high fee. Furthermore, because of this property, depending on the transaction you are making, Bitcoin may have advantages or disadvantages compared to the traditional form, assuming if you need to transfer an amount of money. Bitcoin is very large, for example, 1,000 Bitcoins. The current price is somewhere around $70 million, so the transfer cost of Bitcoin is very low. However, if it is a form of payment like buying bread or a pair of pants or a shirt, the payment cost will be very high, but in the context we are talking about, using Bitcoin to replace for money as a payment tool, in this context Bitcoin cannot be a substitute for cash or other traditional payment methods followed by stability from a value. From a payment perspective, as an intermediary tool to exchange goods or value, whether it is Bitcoin or any other currency, we will need a currency that can relative stability. This is exactly what the Vietnamese government has done quite well in recent years. That is, they have anchored the VND and USD exchange rates at a stable level for quite a long time, and this has contributed a very large part to our country's import and export trade activities. With Bitcoin, you can see that the fluctuation amplitude of Bitcoin is very large. This is very simple to visualize. We cannot sell pho when one day the price of pho is $3, the next day it is $5, and then a few days later it drops to $4. But those are normal transactions and at times with larger amplitudes. For example, import-export contracts sometimes last several months, so paying with Bitcoin is impossible. Another factor is whether it is widely accepted or not because of the reasons I just analyzed. So currently, in normal transaction activities, there are almost no places that accept us to pay in Bitcoin. Specifically, imagine now that when we go abroad, if we hold Japanese yen or Korean won, for example, we can at least go to money exchange points to exchange for local currencies of that host country. As for Bitcoin, just exchanging it for money is already difficult, and paying directly with Bitcoin, the probability we find is almost zero. That is, now we talk about a few factors such as transaction time or transaction fees, the level of stability, or whether the market accepts widely or not. I have not talked about complex factors. More complicated than security or safety. This is the strongest feature that people often talk about Bitcoin, but it is also the weakest point of Bitcoin that I will analyze in depth for you now just in particular. With these four factors alone, we can clearly see that Bitcoin cannot replace fiat money, and in fact, Bitcoin supporters have long ago stopped thinking that Bitcoin can be replaced by fiat money. Fiat money is a common payment tool. When Bitcoin cannot be a substitute for money, people begin to reshape the goal of Bitcoin to another goal. Instead of being a payment tool, from now on Bitcoin will be a price storage tool. The value that you most often hear about is Bitcoin. It will replace gold as a tool to shelter assets. These people often argue that gold basically has no real value. Is that it is limited in quantity, and if many people agree that it is valuable, then it will be valuable. Now I will temporarily leave aside the fact that gold also has application values. For example, gold has less resistance than other alloys, so it plays a quite important role in the production of gold. The job is to make electrical conductors on circuit boards or electronic components. But temporarily leaving this factor aside, we temporarily agree that gold does not have any application value. Let's analyze together the main factors and why Bitcoin can replace gold as a non-monetary value storage tool. I think the most important thing is that it is a value storage tool. Must ensure stability and value first. The reason is in the name of this activity. When we need a tool to anchor the asset value, it means we want it to avoid impact external factors, such as we do not want to let inflation or economic fluctuations affect too many assets that we are holding. This is the reason that every time the economy is calculated, when people are unstable, they often seek refuge in gold. However, practice has shown that the element of value stability is completely absent in Bitcoin. I probably don't have to cite this detail because reality has shown that Bitcoin has gone through countless times when its value has decreased or increased dozens of times. Whether it increases or decreases, this shows that Bitcoin is not a stable asset in terms of value. Being gold, it still has price fluctuations, but compared to the fluctuations of Bitcoin, it is nothing, and especially the price fluctuations of gold are due to the consequences of economic fluctuations, such as I just explained, that when the economy has problems, people tend to take refuge in gold and make its price increase. But with Bitcoin, price fluctuations are due to other reasons, most of which are waves. FOMO of the market. Second, when choosing an asset, we need it to have high liquidity and be widely accepted. For years, gold has been a widely accepted asset worldwide. As for Bitcoin, you can easily see that it is still very limited. Even the future of Bitcoin is still a question. Some people believe in its future, some still don't. Now, imagine that on the same topic, if I said I'm not sure about whether gold will still be worth tomorrow or not, people would probably call me crazy. But with Bitcoin, let's talk about it. For all of you sitting here, just hearing me talk about this is proof of the uncertainty of Bitcoin, and there is still one more extremely important core factor that makes me believe that Bitcoin is difficult to replace gold. Once again, the security and anonymity factor is the advantage that many people often praise about Bitcoin. However, as I just said, this is the biggest advantage of Bitcoin. But it is also its essential weakness. I will save this idea to analyze later for you guys. For now, let's stop at the ideas that I analyzed, and we can see that there are many reasons. Also makes us doubt that Bitcoin will be difficult to replace gold as a haven asset. When many people discuss this story, they often talk about the factor when sheltering in gold. Although gold is safe, its price increase is not high. As for Bitcoin, they believe that in the long term it will increase in price to $100,000, $500,000 or $1 million. However, when they say that, they are confused about the concept, because then they no longer look to Bitcoin as a form of storage of value, but they see it as an investment tool when we look to a company. As a tool to store value, the factor of stability in value compared to other valuables will have to come first, and then comes the factor of price increase. If it increases, it must increase stably, but if not, it must be stable. Otherwise it's okay if it doesn't increase as long as it is anchored to other asset values. And once we expect it to increase in price a lot, then we start to no longer see it as a shelter tool, but then it becomes an investment tool. Are very different in nature that many people often get confused. And now we look at this investment concept. First of all, the most important reason that I do not consider this an effective investment channel is that the current Bitcoin market is very loose in terms of management, not only in our country but also in general situation worldwide. First of all, because it is a new type of property, lawmakers need time to research and develop laws for it. Second, because some of its specific properties, especially its anonymity, make managing it more difficult than usual. And third, because of its global nature, it is also a problem. The difficulty is that it requires countries to have certain consensuses on management policies, and each country has different monetary management and tax policies. Putting all of this together leads to the fact that the current Bitcoin market in the American West centuries ago means that it has almost no rules. Where the strong win, the weak lose, and this is the open land of scammers and chicken breeders. When we invest in the stock market, when each company, if they list, they will be subject to supervision by government agencies with countless conditions and strict regulations. Any act of fraud or market manipulation will immediately be subject to sanctions. If any of you remember the intervention of these agencies, a few years ago when Elon Musk made false statements that caused the price of Tesla's shares to increase suddenly, he was immediately arrested by the SEC. The U.S. Securities Management sued and was fined very heavily, but the same thing as Elon Musk in the virtual currency market is a different story. Almost Elon Musk released it without anyone's intervention. Personally, I'm very happy Elon Musk admires him in many aspects. From his perseverance in building Tesla to his breakthrough in building the SpaceX company that is currently pioneering in the field of aerospace, and countless more. His other contributions to humanity. However, when Mr. Elon Musk took charge of the Bitcoin pump in 2021 and then Dogecoin, my perspective on him is a bit different. Actually, frankly speaking, in terms of making money, he was quite sharp when he discovered a loophole, a fertile land where the law had not yet touched, and then took advantage of that opportunity to make it more money. In terms of his acumen about making money, he is very good, but in terms of morality, he is a bit barbaric when so many people have struggled to follow his inflated prices. And Elon Musk's story is just one example among many other examples, and many other scandals such as the collapse of the FTX exchange, or more recently, the Binance exchange scandals as well, has caused a lot of people to struggle. Not to mention the countless cases of hype and other fraud cases in this almost lawless land of virtual currency. Countless coins have been born with a simple goal. Just taking advantage of people's gullibility and desire to get rich quickly. From my personal perspective, Even if that land has gold, I will not dig in a place where I know the law does not exist, where the strong win, the weak lose, and especially when I do not must be strong in such an environment. From the reasons that I just analyzed with you. From the fact that Bitcoin will not replace fiat money and the fact that it is difficult to replace gold, it cannot be used for payments, nor can it be used as a storage tool. It's not a safe investment channel. Looking back, I don't see its future potential, which means that those who invest in Bitcoin currently, from my perspective, are simply following the product that I don't see the future, or it's called the crowd effect. What they do is they buy it one and expect someone else to buy it two so they can resell it for a profit. There's a visual example that I often use when I tell my students that it's fake. Suppose now someone picks up a stone on the street and they want to sell it to me for 1 million Vietnamese dongs. Then obviously I wouldn't be foolish enough to buy that stone, but I will buy it when I know there are someone right after me is willing to buy it back for 1.2 million, and the person who bought it for 1.2 million must also buy it because of its value, but buy it with the expectation of reselling it to someone else. At a price of 1.5 million, the value of the stone slowly increases and someone buys it at the end for 10 million, and then there is no one left behind to buy it at a price of 11 million. Then they will be the last to keep the lifeless stone for 10 million. This story has happened quite a few times in history, and the story of Bitcoin or current virtual currencies, from my personal perspective, is just that simple. A financial instrument that has neither the ability to pay nor the ability to store value. And it also has no future to develop. Its existence and people buying and selling it are simply a matter of hope. At some point, they will be able to sell it to someone at a higher price and actually analyze and look at it realistically. Then we can see that this is the real motive of most people investing in Bitcoin. They invest simply with the desire to sell it to the person behind them at a higher price to make a profit. The information they spread to each other is that Bitcoin will increase in price from 50,000 to 100,000, 1 million United States dollars, and then they will sell it and then they will be rich. A very simple test is that you can ask people who own Bitcoin for what reason they bought it. If they answer honestly, I believe it's mostly for the purpose of not wanting to give up. They miss the wave of rising prices so they can make money, but not many people can clearly understand the nature of the asset they are buying. Because when they clearly understand the nature, they will see that this is a game with a lot of luck, and the risk is more than the luck. For me, I decided to stand aside and not participate in this game because for me, there are still many other investment channels out there where I can make money in a safer and more transparent way. Before the end, let's look back at what I analyzed and shared with you in today's episode. From the reasons why I don't believe Bitcoin can replace fiat money or become a payment tool, to the reasons why I think it can also replace gold or are they alternatives to traditional tools or become a store of value tool, and finally why they cannot become investment tools themselves. With these many reasons, I think it is enough for us to see the whole picture of Bitcoin. But there is still a core factor that I have mentioned many times, and many people also use it to argue that it is the biggest advantage of Bitcoin is its decentralization, security and anonymity, and it is this core element that forms the foundation for the existence of Bitcoin's trust. Many people, however, when we analyze deeply, we will see that the key point is that the thing that makes me not have faith in the success of Bitcoin in the long run is the last straw that leads me to the conclusion. The conclusion is that I will completely stay out of this game. However, partly because the analysis I am about to share with you is the most important factor leading to the conclusion of whether to invest in Bitcoin or not, and whether Bitcoin can have such a future. Whether people expect it or not, I will reserve it for another episode to analyze this aspect carefully. In the upcoming episode, I will share with you the reason why I think Bitcoin will happen sooner or later. It will also have the same ending as the story about the stone that I shared with you when I was still practicing today. It is quite long, so I would like to stop here if I find this content useful. If it's useful, please share it with your friends and relatives. In addition, as usual, YouTube's algorithm prioritizes videos with many likes, so if you like this video, please click on the like button. To help more people know about our podcast, you can also consider subscribing to the channel. Whenever I update any new content, YouTube will notify you. Thank you for following. Follow up and hope you have a productive day.